Hi, welcome to the Personal History Hub. Today we're going to be looking at more civil rights content, this time at the events in Little Rock in 1957. So, Little Rock High School, 1957. So, after the Brown versus Topeka decision at Little Rock High School, which is in Arkansas. So, if you're not sure where Arkansas is, it's this state here that's highlighted in red. So, it is part of the southern states of America. It's not necessarily part of that kind of deep south belt that we see. Okay, but it is very close. So, this is kind of your deep south around here. But yeah, it is close and it's definitely in the south. They decided to allow 9 black students to enrol there. 80 had applied in total. So they were 9 very high achieving students. So there was very little chance of them failing any kind of test the school might give them before kind of allowing them to attend. So any entry exams, they would be passing them because they were very bright students. So on the 3rd of September 1957, the Little Rock Nine, as they were kind of came to be known in the media, that was their nickname, led by someone called Elizabeth Eckford, so she was one of the young ladies, tried to enrol, but was prevented by the state governor, Orville Faubus. So he had ordered the Arkansas National Guard to block the students from entering the building. Faubus claimed that there were threats of public disorder if the black students were allowed to enrol, so needed to preserve what he called as law and order. This went against the federal law that had been passed after the Brown versus Topeka case. So if you want to find out more about what Brown versus Topeka is, there's another video on that, the last video. Okay, so there she is, Elizabeth Eckford. So the parents of the 9 took the matter to court, represented by Thurgood Marshall of the NAACP, and the judge ordered that integrated classes should begin by the 4th of September. Okay, so the judge did say that they should be allowed into integrated classes. They were greeted, however, by an angry mob of nearly 1,000 white students, parents, and just general citizens of the town, determined to stop this integration from happening. So 100 armed National Guard troops encircled Central High School. One of the 9, 15-year-old Elizabeth Eckford, as seen in that picture to the right, was surrounded by the mob, which threatened to actually lynch her. She and the others were finally led to safety by a sympathetic white woman. So the situation began to escalate. So by the 20th of September, Judge Davies ruled that Faubus had used the to prevent integration, not to preserve law and order as he was claiming. Okay, so which is clearly breaking that law of Brown versus Topeka. Faubus had no choice but to withdraw those National Guard troops. So 3 days later, on September 23rd, a mob of 1,000 white people milled around outside Central High School. So a bit of a mob is forming. The 9 black students did manage to gain access through a side door to the school. However, the mob did become very unruly when it learned that the black students were inside the school, and the police had to evacuate them out for fear for their own safety. Okay, so that was kind of the scenes that were going on at Little Rock at the time. That's what it would have looked like, loads of guards accompanying them through. Eisenhower, who was the president of America at the time, was forced to act. He just had to act. He couldn't turn a blind eye anymore, so he turned a blind eye in the Brown versus Topeka case. He could no longer do that. So that evening, from the White House, the president delivered a nationally televised address in which he explained that he had taken the action to defend the rule of law and prevent mob rule and anarchy from breaking out. So on September 25th, the Little Rock Nine entered the school under heavily armed guard. Despite the president's intervention, Governor Faubus closed all Arkansas schools the following year to prevent any further integration. Many white and most black students therefore had no schooling for a whole year. Schools in Arkansas only reopened in 1959 following a Supreme Court ruling. Okay, so Faubus really did take this to the extreme. So why was Little Rock such a significant event in the civil rights movement? So it involved the president, thus demonstrating that civil rights was an issue that could no longer be ignored. So it's one of the first big things that a president has been involved in the civil rights movement. Okay, so there's Eisenhower. And it demonstrated that states would be overruled by the federal government when necessary. The demonstrations were seen on TV and in newspapers, not just in America, but all around the world. So the USA was embarrassed to be seen as an oppressive nation when it was, at the time, criticising communist countries for not allowing their citizens to have basic human rights. They were kind of seen to be being a bit hypocritical here. And it came at a time when the Soviet Union had launched its Sputnik satellite and gave the Soviet media the opportunity to claim not only technological superiority, but also kind of moral human rights superiority over the USA. So you'll learn more about that point when you do the Cold War course. Okay, so that comes in at the time that they always wanted to be seen to be the best nation in the world. Many US citizens also saw for the first time the racial hatred that actually existed in the southern states. So, especially those living in the north and the west of the country that didn't really know what was going on in the south, they were beginning to read about this in newspapers, see it on television sets if they had them at home at the time. It did help to moderate some of the views held by white Americans at the time because Little Rock had highlighted the continued racism, especially in the southern states. And events like those at Little Rock High School led Black activists to realise that reliance on the federal courts was not enough to secure change. So, despite that Brown ruling, there was still a big issue at Little Rock trying to get those 9 students in. So, just because Brown versus Topeka happened in 1954, that wasn't necessarily meaning full integration in education straight away. So, it meant that the issue of civil rights was now at the heart of US politics. Okay, thank you. Don't forget to subscribe to the Pre-Snow History Hub.